Okay, Borodar, Jock and Val, thank you very much for attending the Audit Committee meeting on Monday the 20th of March at 9:30. And I will start with apologies, please.
I have apologies this morning from Councillor Parry-Jones and Councillor Smith.
Okay, and did we have one councillor who's going to be late, did we say? Or are they in now?
Councillor Arwin Roberts.
Okay, all right, Jock and Val. And now I'll bring in Matt just to go through the declaring of interest for today's meeting.
Well, Chair, if it's any members have declarations of interest that relate to matters on the agenda today, now's the time to declare them. Although, of course, if within the course of a meeting anything occurs to a member that hadn't at this time, then they can declare them at this time, Chair. So now's just the time to invite any such declarations, Chair.
Okay, would anyone like to declare on any items for today, please? No, I can't see anyone indicating, so I'll move on to
Chair,
items.
did you wish to declare a personal interest on an item on the agenda today?
Does it actually mention the site?
There's no need to do that. Just the agenda item, Chair, and the nature of the interest.
Yeah.
The nature of the interest.
So yeah, so item 8 for the training centre as chair of planning. If there's any relation to that, I'll declare just a personal one today. Jock about, thank you.
And that's because, just for clarity for anybody watching the recording, that's because there is an exemption within the code which says that if the matter relates to another relevant authority to which the member is also a member, then that is only a personal interest.
Okay, that's fine. Any others, please, members? Okay, I'm going to move on to notice of urgent matters. I have none, but what I am going to do now is I believe it's Matt's last meeting. So Jock and Val, Matt, you've always been very accessible and very helpful. So best wishes. I think we are going to see him maybe in a few other meetings, but I think this is the last official one. So best wishes from ourselves and officers on all your help, Jock and Val.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and I'm going to go now to the minutes of the meeting on 12th of December, and I'm just going to do it by page, and I assume that you've all read the minutes. So page 1, page 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, are we happy with those minutes, please?
Correct.
Jock and Val, can I have a proposer, Councillor Jones, and a seconder, Councillor Roberts, please. And then I'll go through again for matters arising. Just, oh, sorry, Stuart, did you have an issue?
I've just got one matter to discuss regarding the national pay negotiations, please, Chair, on the matters arising section of the agenda.
Okay. Okay, I'll just go through and bring that up at the end then. So page 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So Stuart's indicated like to just speak. Anyone else, please? No. Okay. Over to you, Stuart, please. Jock about.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Borodar members, good morning. I'd just like to give you an update on the national pay negotiations for firefighters that have been taking place. So the Chief Fire Officer has regularly briefed members of North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority as to the progress of the national pay negotiations for firefighters, and also the service's preparation for potential industrial action. Recently, many of you will have heard on the news that the National Joint Council's pay offer during talks on the 7th of February 2023, where the fire service employees put forward a revised pay offer, which included a 7% pay rise backdated to July last year and another 5% from July this year. The Fire Brigades Union then balloted its members with a recommendation to accept the pay offer, and the outcome of this ballot was overwhelmingly acceptance, with a turnout of 84% of all eligible members, of which 96% voted to accept. We welcome any settlement which avoids industrial action and supports our staff who need a pay rise. And North Wales Fire and Rescue Service has officially stood down all preparations for business continuity now in preparation for industrial action. However, it should be noted that there is no additional funding linked to this pay offer, which means the money will have to be funded from the service budget and can only be done so by a change in emergency cover. Our focus this year will be to provide you with options through the emergency cover review to find the appropriate balance between the challenges we face as a fire and rescue service to protect the people of North Wales and ensuring that we have a sustainable budget going forward. Thank you, Chair. That's all I wish to say on that matter.
Okay. Anyone want to speak on that, or can I move on, please?
Chair, could I speak? I'm
Of course you can, yeah.
I'm really pleased that we've come to an agreement, or the UK government has come to an agreement with the FPU. I'm really bothered to understand that they've settled without offering any of their own money. I find that quite bizarre. If you're in a negotiation to offer a 5% pay rise without offering any additional money seems completely bizarre to me, and that's the first I've understood of that deal. So possibly, Gal,
would it be possible then to have some kind of response to that?
Some kind of feedback as to how acceptable that is, because obviously we'll have to find the money, won't we?
Okay, so if members are happy, I'm happy to talk to the chair to agree some sort of response, which obviously will be shared with members. I think it's a valid point because it's easy to negotiate without putting new money in. So it's not been fulfilled, and you're quite right to pick it up. So if members are happy, I'm happy to talk and raise that issue with the chair. Members happy with that? Okay. Joachim Vow, any other questions? Or can I move on to item 6? Oh, sorry, Councillor Roberts, please, Joachim Vow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that it's very important indeed also that we as councillors go back to the leaders of our councils and let them know about this, because as you know, last year the local authorities were placed in a very difficult situation because of the increase in the funding of this authority. So I think it's very important that we give a heads up to the council leaders regarding the fact that a settlement has been made, but again, without any additional funding having been found. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm just going to bring in our treasurer, if I may, David. Joachim Vow, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the others for making the point. Of course, we wanted to talk about this somewhat in item 8 on the programme this morning, where we have an update on the budget, and Helen and I will be saying a little more about that. But the point by the councillor now about communication with the leaders and chief executives and other members in your local authorities is very important as we move forward, because I don't want to steal all Helen's thunder, but we were facing $1.5 million of a gap around Christmas, and this settlement means that an additional $1 million has to be found either by savings or by raising the levy next year. So the communication with councils facing that levy is essentially important, and I thank you for those comments, and we'll come back to it on point 8 on the programme.
Okay, thank you. As you say, we're picking it up later, but thanks for that. And I will move on now to item 6. If there's no further questions, please, Joachim Vow. So provision of internal audit, and I'm going to hand over to the officer in charge of this, Helen. Joachim Vow, Helen.
Bore da pawb, and thank you, Chair. This item on the agenda relates to the provision of internal audit services. What I'd like to do is provide yourselves as members with both the regulatory background, the provision of the services, but also to consider the future arrangements within the authority. The basis for the need for internal audit comes in the account and audit regulations for Wales, and they require the authority to make proper and effective arrangements for internal control. And whilst these regulations aren't prescriptive on exactly how this is achieved, they set out that the arrangements must cover risk and financial management. You'll appreciate that this is very far-reaching in terms of its duty, and actually it forms part of our day-to-day governance in a number of key areas. So, for example, we have a scheme of delegation which ensures that our decisions and commitments are made at the right level within the organisation. We also have really comprehensive financial regulations, we have contract procedure rules and day-to-day processes, to name but a few. And you'll appreciate that these are very comprehensive. So, but the regulations also require that an effective internal audit of the internal control arrangements is undertaken. Therefore, as members, internal audit provides you with an objective assessment of whether the controls are present and operating as effectively as they should be. The role of internal audit in the public sector is governed by the public sector internal audit standards. So really that's to provide you with a set of assurances that your internal audit function is doing what they're meant to do to a standard. And once a year, the head of internal audit is required to provide yourselves with a statement of internal control, and that then forms part of the annual governance statement. So from that, you can see that internal audit is an integral part of our arrangements. Internally within the authority, for many years now, the internal audit provision has been undertaken by Conway County Borough Council. And that's worked really, really well, as Conway has also provided the financial services to the authority. However, more recently, these functions have been brought back in-house because we now have the capacity. And given also some internal staffing challenges at Conway, the arrangements will come to an end this month. The paper on the agenda today seeks approval to enter into a procurement exercise to let the internal contract, and initial work has already been undertaken about the feasibility around this. There is a procurement framework that we can utilise to identify suitable suppliers, and it's proposed within the paper that this work is progressed. It's important that potential suppliers have the relevant skills and experience, as well as the public sector and fire service knowledge and understanding. And clearly that's going to be quite a limited market for us. Ultimately, the appointment rests with the audit committee, and it's further outlined within the paper or proposed that this is delegated to a panel to include chair of the audit committee, deputy chair of the audit committee, and also David as the authority's treasurer. I'm happy to take any queries or questions on the paper. Chair, thank you.
Okay, Giacomo, for that. And obviously, thank you for the help Conway have been giving us. And I'll take any questions if there is any. Okay, our treasurer, please, David Giacomo.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just since there are no other questions, I shall come in first. Well, there is no criticism of the service from Conway. It's a matter of that it's only appropriate to go out to procurement from time to time, and it's now the appropriate time. And internal audit now is not on financial grounds, but they provide that there are appropriate financial controls in place. So I'm interested in ensuring that the internal audit is appropriate and effective. So I would have an interest in sitting on this little panel just to help Helen with appointing and to see what's there as providers. And I think it'd be appropriate, perhaps, unless anyone else is going to offer, that the chair and vice chair of this committee would be a suitable panel for Helen to help her in the work.
Okay, I'll just run that past. Okay. Any thoughts on that, members, please? Or are we happy with that proposal?
I propose the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Owen, you have a seconder, please, Councillor Jones. And then are we all happy, please? Okay. Okay. Is that okay, Matt?
Although those recommendations were moved and seconded and carried, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. And Helen, do you need anything else, or are you happy? Jock about?
No, thank you, Chair. That's excellent, and we'll ensure that some dates are in the diary to progress
Okay.
this.
Okay,
you.
and thanks for the report, Helen. It was very thorough and very clear. So, Jock about, appreciated. Okay, everyone happy if I move on to item 7, please? Okay, I'm going to move on to item 7, which is Audit Wales Annual Audit Summary 2022. And I believe that's yourself again, Helen, Jock about.
It is indeed. This is a very short item and it's in for information only. What the report does is brings together into a single document a summary of the work of the authority's external auditors, Audit Wales. This work was undertaken during 2022 and it covers the external audit of the authority's financial statements, the annual governance statement, the local government measure 2009, which requires the authority to demonstrate improvement, as well as their local projects, which included the carbon emission reductions. All of the work undertaken in relation to the authority is highlighted within the report, and each of these pieces of work has been subject to a separate report to the Audit Committee and Fire and Rescue Authority. On that basis, I don't propose to work through the report in detail. Safe to note that we've accepted all of the recommendations, and against each aspect there will be work to address any issues raised. I am happy to take any questions from members in relation to that aspect, but I'd also like to highlight that within the report there are some additional projects undertaken by Audit Wales, and they relate to the local government sector as a whole. And therefore, whilst that work hasn't necessarily been done within our authority, it's worth noting for completeness in terms of the relevance to us. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the report, but this was for information only.
Okay, Jock and Bow, any questions or points? Or are we just happy to note the report? Okay, everyone seems happy with that. And again, Jock and Bow, thank you. Very clear report. And I will go on to now item 8, so don't get confused. Item 8, we change it around a bit, the budget, and the subject is the 2023-24 revenue budget. Our treasurer, David, is going to go through this for us. Jock and Bow, David.
Thank you, Chair. We have discussed this a good deal already, but as I was saying at the beginning of the meeting, with the situation at the turn of the year, we set a budget and a levy for the year beginning in April, with the increase in the levy of 9.9%, and that meant that we faced a gap of about 1.4 million, and the work to deal with that, there were various, well, not recommendations, but ideas that could bridge that gap as we move forward. As we had the news of the national pay agreement with the UK government, which is encouraging for our workforce, it does create more of a headache for us financially. The difference between what we had put in the budget, and I do remember being challenged on the levels in the meeting in January in the working group, and certainly I was saying, well, if we raise the inflation increase in the budget, we ought to go up, and we were cutting it fine, as they say. So I'd assumed 5% in 22-23 and 4% in 23-24. It's turned out at 7% and 5%, the difference, the accrued difference between those figures for the budget as we move forward is 1 million, in addition to the 1.4 million that we had already, which gives a total of 2.4 million of a gap, which is very challenging. And there are only two ways we have of doing that, and one is to find ongoing savings, and the second one is to increase our income. And the only way we can increase income in that level is from the local authorities. And clearly, cuts of that sort, and not to anyone's taste, but clearly also for the taxpayer and the councils rather, which are constitutional authorities. If we were to put it all on the levy, we would be talking about 20% increase next year. And I think that we shall have to look at this as a sort of compromise as we move forward. We cannot avoid an increase in the levy that is quite significant next year, but I shall also be looking for savings. Those who were in the working group last week, well, there was the review of the fire cover review going on, and we have not commissioned those consultants to look for savings specifically, but we hope that their proposals will be able to come up with some options for you that will give us some sort of savings as we move forward. These figures are very significant in the context of the authority's budget, and they are inevitable. We cannot avoid paying this new salary. And in terms of the year starting now, we can live just about using the reserves, one-time reserves, to bridge that for a year, because that is of the judicious decisions by you as members of this authority in the past, to put us in a strong enough position to survive for a year. But that is not going to be possible in the long term. We can only use the reserves once, and clearly some of those reserves we shall use have been set up in the first place for a specific purpose. And in the long term, we shall have to revisit those reserves and replenish them. But in the short term, we can cope with the situation, but it is tight. And if we were to hit some kind of crisis during the next financial year, there's the possibility that we would have to go back to the constitutional authorities to ask for what we call a supplementary levy, but nobody wants that at this point in time. It would send the wrong signals that there's more of a crisis than there is, and that we can't manage things. So the local authorities have not budgeted for anything additional, so we don't want just to pass this on as shoveling something, as they say. So we want to try and cope with this for a year, and we will have to share some of the pain by next autumn. And the point from Councillor Austin Roberts that we shall have to begin communicating this with the authorities now, so this does not come as a shock in the autumn. Well, Helen, I'm not sure whether it was you that wanted to present this, but have I missed anything?
Thank you, David. I think just for the purposes of clarity, I think it's worth noting that there are two risks: the risk to 22-23 and also the risk to 23-24. So as you've just articulated, the only way to manage this risk that's come to fruition without actually the supplemental levy is the use of reserves. Those reserves will be significantly depleted. So I think what it does is bring into sharp focus the need for the emergency cover review to relook at the service provision and the associated costs. There are still residual risks, and the residual risk for us remains the local government pay settlement for our staff condition to Green Book terms and conditions hasn't yet been finalised. We've had the indicative offer, which would put a further cost pressure in of about 130,000, but that's thus far not been accepted. So it is a very difficult position that we find ourselves in. But I think it's to give those to give yourselves as members assurances that we're looking at every opportunity this year to reduce down costs as much as we can. But absolutely, these costs cannot be absorbed through efficiency savings at all. Thank you.
Okay, just before I bring anyone in, can David or Helen, can we just clarify? It does seem odd that another body or government negotiates a pay increase, but then leaves us to sort it out. So is that normal? Because it feels very odd to me. So and I think we do need to touch on it, because the words used there by our treasurer was survive, and to be in that position isn't good. My other question, and then I'll go out to members, reserves, are our reserves what they should be after this? And then I'll bring in members. Jock about.
Thank you very much. If I could perhaps pick up certainly the first area. In terms of the negotiation is undertaken nationally, and that is their employer and employee representatives. So it is actually slightly removed from government, and there is representation from the Welsh Fire and Rescue authorities on that. The unfortunate reality of that, though, is that those national negotiations are binding on all authorities. So whilst we are wedded to that outcome, it then sits with ourselves to actually make arrangements internally to manage it. So you are quite correct. It is quite correct, though, that what we haven't experienced is any additional government funding to support this. So certainly not for 22-23 and certainly not for 23-24. So I think the working assumption by both the UK government is, and also the Welsh government, is that this will have to be met through our own existing mechanism.
Okay, and just a point on reserves before I go out to members.
Thank you very much. Yes, in terms of reserves, at the end of 2021-22, our total usable reserves were 7.1 million. That included about £1.5 million in general fund and then earmarked of 5.6. Now, those earmarked reserves are clearly held for future costs that we know we're going to incur. And some of those will be around initiatives that we want to implement. During 22-23, we will anticipate using about 3 million of those reserves. So if a further 1.5 is utilised during 23-24, and that's what would be necessary to meet the cost of the pay award, that leaves us 2.6. The general fund would be completely utilised, and the 2.6 would be earmarked reserves. I think the Treasurer already articulated that as part of our emergency cover review, to maintain that financial stability, we're going to have to relook to sort of review those reserves and make sure that we've got stability moving forward as well. So it does leave us, it's very, very tight. Not ideal.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it is tight. And Jock out for that. I'll bring in our Treasurer first before bringing in Councillor Owen. David, please, Jock about.
Yeah, diolch.
Yes, thank you. Helen has answered the point technically just on the word survive. I think what I used in Welsh was dygymod, which...
That's okay. Okay.
Survive, but survive does make the point, really. We are in a difficult place.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry if the quote wasn't quite accurate, but...
No, that's right.
Okay, Councillor Owen, please, Jock about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to add a point to Austin Roberts' point. I think also hearing that the UK government, in fact, have come to an agreement without funding it. I think it's important that our members of Parliament also are informed of this, because it is they who are in a position to raise the matter in the House of Commons and to be able to ask the questions that are right there as to why the UK government are not prepared to offer money to help to pay for this. And also, I think we ought to allow members of Parliament to know, because the pressures on next year's budget to fund local government, it's important that they know that the fire authorities are also going to be asking for more funds, so less, in fact, for the local authorities to carry out their other issues. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that. Any other points, members? Councillor Evans, please. Talk about.
I find it very annoying, very saddening that the British government hasn't put in the funding that is required, especially with the the additional pay claims which have to be met. And I personally don't accept that they can just ignore the issues and difficulties that they place in different associations, especially the fire service in. And I feel they must be pressurized. And we must go back to them again, point out the issues, point out the difficulties, point out the financial problems that we have. And they must be pressurized to find some money for us. I don't accept they can just turn it down. We have to go back to them and say, look, if you want a professional, adequate service for the Fire and Rescue Authority, you have to go back into your pockets. You have to fund us. I'm not going to just accept that they can just turn us down willy-nilly and say, sorry, we're not. I will go back to my own MP and put that to her. And I would expect her, as our last speaker said, to go back to Parliament and indicate the issues and the difficulties that this particular authority are in. I find it unacceptable.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Bateman, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I totally agree with all the speakers that we should definitely go back to both governments, in fact, and tell them the difficulty that this essential authority is in. But we've all felt the pain recently of trying to balance the budgets in our different areas. And speaking on behalf of Flintshire, because of the Barnett formula, we're paid 20th out of 22 of the total authorities in Wales. And yet, when it comes to funding the fire authority, we fund them the most. And there is an imbalance there. And I think there's so many things have got to be looked at when it comes to the money from both governments and to keep this essential service going. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And Councillor Jones, please, Jock Vale. Thank you.
I think as quite a new member of the authority, it's always handy to know how much we can discuss outside these meetings. So if it were possible to have some kind of guidance regarding bullet points or whatever as to what's possible from Helen or David about what we can discuss with our authorities, with our members of parliament, because I think it's important. I agree entirely with everyone who has spoken that we must lobby hard. This is a political decision. We are here as elected members. It's important that we lobby hard, therefore, but I am always dubious as to how much we can say, what we can share with external bodies in case we are breaking some kind of confidentiality. So I would appreciate some bullet points from people if possible. I'm not sure whether we need bullet points, Mark. I think, well, Helen has given us the information on page 21 of the pack. Is that open? That's a public report. So this is a public meeting, so everything that we have said is on record and is open, and we can discuss any matter before us today.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring Matt in, if I may. So before was mentioned about me contacting the chair of the authority, Councillor Rees, to communicate with the relevant people and bodies. Are we okay to do that as a suggestion? Because that's been agreed, but I just need to check. Would that be appropriate, please, Matt?
Well, essentially, Chair, it's lobbying about the issue. And, you know, just in terms of confirmation, this isn't a confidential item. It's an open report. It's an open meeting. Of course, councillors that are concerned about issues are entitled to lobby about those issues.
Okay, and a letter from the chair to the relevant governments and authorities if needed. Is that okay?
I'd understood that had been agreed, Chair.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking, but this item also can also needs to be confirmed in that, so that's okay. Talking about everyone. Any other points of members? Okay, I'll just bring in David, our treasurer. Is there anything we need to confirm for yourself, please?
No, it's a matter of noting the great challenge we face. That's the point in this report.
Okay, so as long as that's minuted, please. And as I say, I'll communicate with the chair on the previous point raised. And I will move on if everyone's happy.
Perhaps just for the sake of procedure, if we just move and second the members note the.
Yeah. Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Sorry, proposer and a seconder. So Councillor Jones and Councillor Walker, we're all happy. Okay, Giacomo, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Matt. And I will move on now, please, if that's okay, to item 9. Thank you for that, David. And your clear views on that are really helpful. Tough times, but I will move on to item 9, which regards the new training centre update. And I believe the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Stuart, will talk us through this. Giacomo, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report, members, is to present this committee with an update on the work undertaken on the production of a detailed business case for a new fire and rescue training and development centre in North Wales. The authority is committed to the provision of essential operational training to its staff to support service delivery and firefighter safety. And as previously mentioned in previous meetings, the Chief Fire Officers undertook an assessment during 2021, which identified training as a priority area, and the authority gave approval to undertake a full review on the future delivery of operational training and developments within the service. This review has included a review of current operational training facilities, including those at the firehouse, which is located in Dolgellau, and which although continues to be used for operational training, it requires significant investment to extend its medium-term lifespan for risk-critical breathing apparatus and firefighting tactics training, and it cannot be considered as a long-term option. It is also located in an area of North Wales, which is a considerable distance for the majority of our staff to travel and attend breathing apparatus courses, and the challenges that brings with it. Fire contaminants is always a risk to our staff, and that can be found in the smoke and toxic flammable gases released during fires, and it may contribute to cancer and other health conditions in firefighters. So the management of fire contaminants needs to be included in a new training and development centre design. And though we've put interim measures in place, the long-term management of fire contaminants is a health and safety concern at the current hot fire training facilities in Dolgellau. The review also considered the training provision delivered from Real Fire Station, and it's identified the need to invest in a new training development facilities to ensure firefighter operational preparedness and safety in the future. In particular, there is a need to provide practical, immersive training experiences across a range of scenarios that our operational crews may be required to deal with at any time in their response roles. The review of operational training facilities in the service also supports the findings of the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor's thematic review for operational training within the Welsh Fire and Rescue Services, which recognises the need for significant capital investment required to replicate real-world conditions for firefighters to develop and refresh their operational skills. To mitigate these risks, operational training development for our staff in a realistic and immersive training environment, which includes adequate health and safety measures, needs to be at the forefront of training development centre design to provide essential facilities for at least the next 25 years in North Wales. Following approval by the Fire Authority on the 17th of October 2022 to allocate a budget for the development of a detailed business case for the new training development centre, a number of options are being explored by the project team. This work has included the identification of a suitable piece of land to locate a new training and development centre in Denbighshire. The next steps now will be for the authority to enter into a 6-month exclusivity agreement with the landowner, and this will enable the relevant surveys, sustainability assessments and discussions with local planning officers prior to the submission of an outline planning application to take place, and is expected to take approximately 6 months and include with a presentation of the business case for the land purchase to the full Fire Authority on the 23rd of October 2023. You will recall that a budget for land purchase has been included in the Fire Authority's 22-23-24 budget, with its conditional use following members' approval and the production of a robust business case by officers. Separate to the land purchase, the detailed business case for the new training and development centre is scheduled to be completed in the summer and be brought to members for further scrutiny and approval at that time. Members, as always, will be kept up to date and informed of progress on this project as it develops during the preceding months. And a recommendation that a working group should be created and include all Fire Authority members from each of the constituent council areas. Therefore, Chair, the recommendation is that members note the background of the review of the fire and rescue training facilities in North Wales. Note that the current training provision is reaching its end of life. Note that the next stage of the project has commenced to confirm suitability and identified land. Note the timescales set out in this report for the provision of the detailed business case for members' consideration. And finally, identify members from each constituent council to form a part of a working group to help develop and scrutinise plans for the new training centre in North Wales. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Okay, diolch yn fawr for that. Ready for a report, and if it just confirm, it doesn't sound like we've got much option when you talk about the condition of the present facility. So this is something we need to do, and it's fit for purpose for the future, as you say. Any questions on this item, please? Councillor Owen, please, talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have is about the training centre in Dolgella. You have noted some of the things that it's not possible for this centre to train, and I accept those comments in full, of course, but does that mean that the training centre has to close entirely? Surely there are some things in training that you have not mentioned that could still take place in Dolgella, and perhaps, well, it's sad to see everything leaving a rural area when perhaps there is an opportunity to still have some of the training there. So it's a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Owen. Yeah, well, the plan for Dolgella will be to continue training there for at least the next 5 years anyhow. If approval is given to build a new training development centre, it will take anything up to 5 years before that new training centre is fully operational. We are spending a considerable amount of money in this current year or the coming year to upgrade the extraction system at Dolgella. So the plan will be to continue to use Dolgella following any new training centre being built, and though it won't be at the full capacity that it is now. So at the moment, we do currently carry out training within the local areas anyway, and that will continue. And obviously the training centre, well, the firehouse is on the back of one of our fire stations as well. So the fire station will still be there, operational, and crews locally to that fire station will be able to continue to use it, but not in the full sense that it's used today.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, please? Just on the recommendation, if I may, then as the chair of this meeting, I think it would make sense if our chair, Councillor Rees, and our vice chair, Councillor Cunningham, sat on this this working group. So if members are happy that, and if Matt can confirm that that suggestion is okay, I think it's important that we do involve them. So any thoughts on that, and if Matt can just confirm that would be okay as an item to be suggested.
Chair, I think that's entirely matters for members and the committee. And I don't know whether officers have any suggestions about membership, or I would have thought that if that hasn't been discussed previously, that it might be a matter for democratic services managers to confirm once discussions have been had between members and democratic services managers. But Chair, if you want to propose that the chair and vice chair are on the group, then it will be open to the meeting to make a determination on that.
Okay, just before I go to members, I'll just check that Stuart's okay with that. Did you want to come in, Stuart, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the proposal is that would like a member from each of the constituent councils on. So if the chair of the authority, Councillor Rees, obviously will represent Anglesey Mon, and then Councillor Cunningham can represent Flintshire. If we can get the other 4 council areas represented as well, and whichever way that we can do that, as Matt recommends, you know, through democratic services, we can ask for volunteers. That's absolutely fine. I guess it's a call for support for this piece of work, and being members of that group, please.
Okay, so if I'm guessing, would yourself write to democratic services in each authority, Matt? Would that be the process?
Yeah, we can write following the meeting and ask for the number of members from each of the remaining authorities.
Okay, I'm just going to have members then. Are they happy with the proposal of the chair and vice chair to sit on this group? Yeah, Councillor Jones and a second, Councillor Bateman. Are we all happy with that suggestion, please? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, so can we also, I'm guessing we just need confirmation we're happy with the recommendations in total, so can I have a proposer on that, please? Okay, Councillor Bateman, and can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Walker, please. And are we all happy with the full recommendation, please? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else on that point? Stuart, did you want to come back on anything? Are you happy with that?
No, thank you, Chair. That's
And
fine.
just a confirmation, when did you want the group to be up and running by, just so we understand the times of that, please?
Well, I think it's important we get the group up and running within the next month, Chair, please. There's a number of site visits that we'd like to carry out, you know, looking at training centres in other fire and rescue authority areas, and also showing members, you know, the site at Dolgethley and also at Rill, just so everyone has an understanding really on what we currently have and what the vision is for the new training centre in the future.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to finish that item if that's okay. Anyone else, or can I move on? Okay, I'll move on to on my agenda it says urgent matters, but I don't believe there's any, Matt. And there's no part 2.
No, Chair.
Okay, so before I close the meeting, just date of next meeting, please, Lisa. Do we have that in anywhere?
Yeah, sorry, the date of the next meeting is the 19th of June.
Okay. Okay, Jock and Val, thank you all. I think we can close the meeting. Thanks to officers, members. Good productive meeting. Have a good day. Jock and Val, to that one, Jock and Val. Thank you very much.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark, for doing a good job at the chairing.
No problem. Jock and Val, thank you.
Bye. Bye, Mark.
Ta-ra, Bob.
Thank you. Goodbye.